It's the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Journal, our Thursday night podcast, where we're going to be talking about the obvious appointment of Russell Martin, and we'll maybe do a bit of diving into some potential transfer targets that Doug's kindly provided with us. So, introducing everybody first, I'm with Ross. Ross, how are you?
Very good, mate. Very good. Thanks very much for having me on to discuss the gleeful signing of our new head coach. Hopefully bring some positivity to the proceedings.
That's it. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then representing the young team, I've got Tam.
Hello, I'm all good.
And then also we have Billy.
Really happy to be here for the start of the Russell Martin era, so bring it on.
And last but not least, we have Mitch.
Aye, the devil's favourite son's arrived.
Right, it's safe to say, I think, last night, I think we had our very own sort of Mo Johnson era style announcement. Russell Martin got the job, too much hesitation, anxiety, whatever word you want to throw at it. Obviously, he had his press conference first thing this morning, so if you didn't see it or you're only catching up, I'll just basically run through a few things that he said that I caught my eye. Basically, he said this was the job he really wanted. When he looked back on his career as a player here, it didn't go very well. And if you watch the Rangers interview, it's on YouTube with him, he actually goes on to say about how at this point in his career, his body was failing him and he wasn't able to produce the best of what he was capable of at the time. And he says that one hurts and he wants to show a different version of himself here. Another thing he said was there was a lot of other interest for him from different clubs around the continent. But this was the one they really wanted because he knows the expectation of the club and the size and what it means to the fans, the usual sort of PR fluff that any sort of Rangers manager gives the fans. But he doubles down and says he's really honest from the start. This was his first choice. One thing he did say was that we need to win early and we need to find a way to win while we're developing. I thought that was key, considering obviously he's going to implement a new style of play, and there's going to be a big transformation for the club, for the playing squad. So there's a lot of change, obviously going to be coming as well. So as I highlighted earlier, there's a lot of anxiety amongst the support to get this right, because this is what we need. We need to get this next appointment right, and I think definitely for the 49ers group, this is going to be a sort of a hill that they'll have to sort of lay down on. Did the press conference change your anxiety or your thoughts about it, Mitch, at all? We'll start with you.
Do you know, a little bit, do us a wee favour if you can, can you drop the banner from the bottom?
Aye. I'll try my best.
I know. See, this is why I don't get trusted by the control panels. I press the wrong knob and then
Ross
would start screaming.
There you go.
Excellent, mate. Honestly, I think in all honesty, I think his actual interview on Rangers TV probably done more for me, who was on the fence about the appointment, than the presser did. And I think, in all honesty, I think he spoke really, really well in that interview, and he talked about his philosophy. And one of the biggest things for me, which we've been speaking about for weeks here, is the need for athletes in the team, about the constant press, the constant running. Where he spoke directly and said, I want to outwork and outrun every team that we play.
Yep.
And I think that's going to give our players probably a level of fitness that some of them have never ever seen before in their puff. And I think that goes hand in hand, in my opinion, with having probably less injuries, because players are physically more robust after being more, better prepared and better laid down. And I appreciate that he spoke about being versatile in the tactics and, open to being a bit more fluid than he's maybe been in the past. And I think for me, in terms of first interviews, I think it settled some of my hesitation. And as always, when it comes to a gaffer at Ibrox, I will back him to the hilt until he gives us a reason not to.
Aye, I agree with what you say. Tam, I know you had some reservations when you were speaking on, I think was it Tuesday night you were on. Has that changed at all after the press conference, after hearing him speak and what he had to say?
He talked well. I think quite a few of the answers were quite media trained.
Yeah.
The ones about going out and winning trophies. He kind of he held back a little bit. He was pressured about it quite a lot, but he did say, look, we do want to win. He did talk about his backroom team as well, people that have been with him through thick and thin, basically. Did talk really well, so I'm excited, I think. It's obviously just need to see how it goes. Just now, we don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. But it's good that he's in the door. He can start working with the players. As Mitch just said about the physical fitness, that is something that he does like to do. And he did say about bringing in a physiotherapy coach. I think he's coming in next week to talk to everyone in the medical team. And hopefully that means that we will rule out some of those injuries, because that's something that's plagued us for the last couple of seasons. So, there's obviously still some reservation inside probably every single one of us. But, looking forward.
Billy, what do you think?
I've got to be honest, in the process running up to it, was well down the list of people that I wanted or expected to be the next Rangers manager. What I will say is he did speak well at the presser, very much like a coach who's used to doing media duties down in England and has kind of got experience of that a little bit like Gerrard was. And I thought it was funny. You could tell he's been coached, because one of the key things everyone's been holding against him is this sort of he's a philosophy coach, and there's one way to do things. And at one point I counted, actually was like, did I imagine that? He actually used the word different 5 times in 2 sentences. I used different formations at different clubs with different players in different situations. So clearly he knows what our reservations are. I've got to be honest, the presser and the interview, I thought did the job. They've made me more excited and apprehensive. But at the end of the day, this is what the future is going to look like. This is what having grown-ups who are not Rangers fans running the club is going to look like. They're not going to give, a flying non-expletive what monkeys. We think. Yeah, monkeys. There we go. Fig I was going to use, but I know we're not supposed to swear on here, so it's like grasping for something. They're not going to care. They didn't listen to the Leeds fans when they were punting 3 players for 100 million and not replacing a striker in the winter, and looks like they got it right. And I think we're going to have to get used to maybe not being as influential on a day-to-day basis as maybe we've been in the past. So what I will say is, when I look at Gerrard dropping out, every candidate had question marks against him. Had Gerrard, he was tarnished, and did he still have the same hunger? Did he still have the same ability without the backup staff he had before? As it's gone on, I'll be honest, when it was coming down to Ancelotti or Russell Martin, in 5 years' time, we could be looking, and Russell Martin still a jobbing manager, and Ancelotti is the new Pep Guardiola. But as it stands just now, I would rather have a manager who's been sort of in the oven or cooking for 5 or 6 years, who's got experience in making mistakes and getting things right, because it was one of my big concerns about Ancelotti. It's fine being at these big clubs, but when you're the guy making the decisions, and if they go wrong, the pressure builds on you, and then how do you make decisions under further pressure? Whereas Russell Martin's done that, so he's got 5 or 6 years under his belt, and to be honest, he's at an age where if he's going to mature as a manager, we're getting him at a good time. He talks the talk, all this attacking football buzzword stuff. He talks the talk. So I've got to be honest, from a position of, I thought Scotty nailed it last night. It was actually quite funny. I was kind of tuning in last night, and for a new manager pod, the kickoff was, so well, Russell Martin then.
Yeah.
And then over to Dino, who was underwhelmed, which I think we all felt last night. But I think it feels more and more like of the candidates that were looked at, it feels like a mature decision. But he better get backed, because he's talking the talk and he's got all these great plans for the team. This is actually where the new owners are going to have to step up. So that's the bit I'll be more excited to see how they're going to back him, having heard what kind of coach he plans to be.
Yep. I think you're right. I think he does need backing, and like you say, this is another area where the investment that they've promised has to sort of stand out. And that will obviously be a part of the playing squad. Now, granted, we probably will lose some of that, but we're hoping to lose some of that for a bit, at least decent money to replenish and help boost the coffers. Ross, come to you then. How did you feel about the press conference and the way he spoke today? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Or are you just going through the motions?
I think I got to the 5th stage of grief really quickly when Gerrard pulled out the running, to be honest, and hit the acceptance that it was going to be either Ancelotti or Russell Martin. And at that point, there wasn't really much to look into when it came to Ancelotti and his style. At that point, I started to have a look at Russell Martin and start to dig a bit deeper into the type of coach he was, seen some of the sort of Twitter threads and stuff that came up for Southampton fans, watched his sit down with Gary Lineker and actually found that I thought he spoke really well about football, and that some of the ideas that he was trying to implement are ideas which I think we need as we go through this rebuild. I thought he was really brave in the Lineker interview, if you've ever seen it, when he's talking about taking a team up from the Championship into the Premiership, but being prepared to be relegated playing the same style of football, because he had the confidence that the young players he'd brought in would be better for that experience, and as a group they would go down and be able to come straight back up, and over that 3 years they would have had a team that were cohesive and bonded and used to playing the way they want to play for when they got back to the Premier League. And I thought that was interesting, because as much as we all want Rangers to go and win the league next year, and there will be some fans who will expect that we now go and win the league next year, but for me, if we can start bedding in younger players and see a real progression in the fitness, in the passages of play, in the chances created, then I think that you've got to give them that bit of time in order to make a plan come together. And I think it's also very ballsy for the new board to go against everything that the fans have been saying online, and to go through what sounded like a very tedious, thorough, well planned out interview process with various candidates to find out who would be the best fit for their vision of what Rangers needs to be going forward, to be sustainable and to start producing talents. When it came to his interview this morning, I thought he was impressive. But what I really liked was his interview with RTV, when you sat and you got that kind of intimate, friendlier discussion where the questions were a bit nicer put towards him. And what I also really liked in that was the fact that he spoke about part of the recruitment and the interview process of this being to look through Rangers' performances and come back and say what you would tweak and what you think the players and stuff have got to offer. And it's really good that we are bringing in a manager who already knows what he's coming into through his admittedly pretty poor spell as a player and the heat that was on him then, to now be able to come in as a manager and right some of those wrongs, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you touched on that, the recruitment side. Like you say, the part of obviously the interview process was assessing the current squad and where we were at and where obviously he would target, and he chatted about that in the interview. I think personally, for me, I think he ticks a lot of boxes of what Rangers fans have been crying out for: a British manager, a style of football, an identity, something we've been banging the drum for a couple of seasons now. Fitness and players. His style of football demands a high level of fitness, something that we're desperate to get, because if we don't have the ball, we're going to be chasing after the ball. The Derby record he has at his previous clubs is quite good as well. I noticed he's got some good results for Swansea against Cardiff and MK Dons as well. So he's got that going for him. He knows He knows how to win derby games, which is a big plus. Go ahead, Mitch.
I think one of the big things there's two big things as well when it comes to Russell Martin, I think, that are massively overlooked at the moment as well, as his first season when he took over at Swansea, like his first proper transfer window. There was a huge overhaul of that squad. Every saleable asset was sold before. That would have been about a year, maybe 2 years before Swansea got the new investment that they've got now. Literally everybody was sold for a price, and it was basically to keep the club afloat. And he had to work with what he had. And I will say, he's responsible for bringing on quite a lot of young players as well, and he's done that at both Swansea and Southampton. You know, young players like Harry Darling, like Matt Grimes, like what's his name? Tyler Dibbing, over at Southampton as well. These are just prime examples. I mean, that Tyler Dibbing is now currently valued at something like £50 million or something. He brought in, even to a lesser extent, guys like Will Smallbone and stuff like that into the Southampton team. Boys who are 20, 21-year-olds when he first walked into the clubs. He's got them at a point where they are playing at a quality level. He's got them at a point where he's laid the foundations for their careers, for them to be successful, and for the clubs that they're currently at to make quite a bit of money off down the road, which is something that we need quite badly as a club, you know, looking at that whole player trading model.
Yep.
The second thing that I think gets overlooked, and it was something that I actually picked up on when I was watching a couple of interviews over the last couple of days, when the acceptance crept in, because, you know, it wasn't my first choice. You know, Billy knows this, Jock knows this, I think everybody here knows this. It wasn't my first choice, but again, we've got who we've got, and, you know, again, always back him right now. I think the thing that probably even I missed as well was when Southampton were promoted last season, he lost his right-hand man in James Wilcox, to Man United. So you would imagine that all the work and the foundations that they had laid into their transfer plans going back into the Premier League probably went straight up the spout when he left the club. And I know that Southampton as a club are quite big on the whole data transfers, and, you know, you've basically been data led when it comes to player transfers. And quite clearly, I can't remember his name that's down there at Southampton now. Southampton obviously had probably targets A, B, and C category. The money that they had, obviously, with getting promoted via the playoffs as well, came later on. So they couldn't just go about and do what Ipswich did there and go and buy players like Liam Delap and stuff. Terrible example, because obviously Ipswich went down, but they were probably shopping in a different marketplace than the rest of the Premier League to begin with. And I think when you have players kind of coming and going and having futures all over the place, I think that Premier League season under Southampton, I think, isn't quite as clear cut as quite a few of us, myself included initially. You know, initially we looked at it, it wasn't quite all black and white to go, well, he turned up, he refused to change his ways, and actually the truth behind it is he lost his right hand man of, you know, his helper of recruitment, and everything that he done, you know, everything that he probably had lined up was kind of pumped out the window.
Tam, in terms of as Mitch says, working with youth, do you expect them to include players like Bailey Rice and other youth players in his plans for the summer, particularly, you know, pre-season, get them in, see what he thinks? Because I know he did talk about players that could surprise him, and he obviously wants to see what a player's like in person before he makes a judgment from seeing them, obviously watching them on videos and watching 90-minute training clips and match clips and stuff like that.
100%. I think that's the first thing he's going to do, is going to play the youth. I think in these pre-season games, this is going to tell us a lot about who he likes and who he won't like. I think Bailey Rice, from watching clips of his Southampton teams and the sort of player he wants in the midfield, Bailey Rice could be one of the mainstays in our team for the next season. He loves playing youth players, which I think on that same tee, it's also a bit of a shame that we've just let quite a few youth players go. So obviously it's up to him, but I think we would see more players like Bailey Rice getting much more game time and a lot of development put into them. It might be that maybe Bailey won't work for us for this season and he'll send him at loan. But I think 100% that we will start to see more of our youth getting used.
Billy, you're getting a fair touch in the comments here about this shirt. Do you want to defend yourself? You're on mute.
You're on mute, mate. It's a sign for the heavens. You can't defend the indefensible here.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I can't defend the shirt. I was about to throw on the bus seat away shirt, but the last time I did that, I was about to do that. Dino was wearing the same one, so I thought I'll just stick with what I'm wearing. So no defence for the shirt. Do you want me to say anything about the football? Or you just want to kind of have
we need to ask, mate, like, what era did you buy that shirt in? Was that when the Bee Gees were still big, or when did this happen?
It's short sleeved, so this is the summer's coming in. Bought it in Germany, so blame it on German fashion. I was in Germany on holiday, needed a short sleeve shirt. It's not much of a defence, and having been browbeaten by peer pressure here, I'll be wearing Rangers tops from now on for fear of
getting a turtleneck, mate. Just be like the Milk Tray Man.
Don't know about that. Scotty's actually in the group chat saying Noel Edmonds has just put a copyright strike on the podcast.
I hope the camel toe's not included.
That's harsh. I'm actually going to double down. I'm going to dig out my worst shirt for the next one and see if I can get something that's even it's getting engagement, even if it's sort of abusive engagement, it's getting engagement. So I'm quite happy with that.
To be fair, mate, the call's coming from inside the house with the abuse.
Billy, in terms of the name Russell Martin, do you think he's going to have a sway or a pull in terms of transfers?
I think he's going to have a pull with a certain type of player because one of the things I think has been a big appeal to the 49ers with Russell Martin is he has managed down in the EPL and in the Championship. He's brought a team up. He had a plan that had he been able to keep them up or bring them back up, that they would have developed. And I think one of the things the 49ers may well be looking at is that he is going to develop players who will look oven ready to the EPL. So like the players who will be playing in a style of football that's familiar in English football, in an attacking way, in a very physical, hard running sort of way. So all the things that actually, when you look at this player trading model that I think is a big thing to the 49ers based on what they've done at Leeds, they're looking at a guy who is not just going to hopefully win his football matches, but who is actually going to make our assets more saleable and more saleable, ideally, to the richest league in the world. So I think if you're a young player, it's a little bit like you go back to the Gerrard era when he came in and players like Aribo came in, and you thought that's someone who's going to get a couple of years here and then we'll get a move to the EPL, and did. And I think if you're a young player who's not quite at the level where you're going to get into the EPL just now, you come up to Rangers, you get experience playing at a big club, playing in Europe, playing in sort of high-pressure matches and Old Firm games. And then ideally in a year or two, we've had decent value at the players and we've added 10, 20 million onto their value and we punt them back down south. So I'm not sure he's going to have the Stardust quality that, like Gerrard was able to bring in Jermaine Defoe. I'm not sure. I know I've heard talk of Jamie Vardy, which just gives... I like Jamie Vardy, don't get me wrong. I think Jamie Vardy is a kind of nippy wee so-and-so I would love to have seen at Rangers in his prime. Yeah. But he's 38, and at 38, I'm not sure I'd be that keen. So I don't think Russell Martin's going to have like the sort of Stardust quality that Gerrard brought. But I think for bringing in like good, hard-running players with a potential for development and a potential to be sold at a much higher value, I think that's what the 49ers have looked at when they've thought about who they're going to bring in, because that's one of the things on his CV you would say, yep, he definitely ticks the box.
Ross, Andrew's asked a question here. Do you think we get some Leeds players up on loan? Would you be up for taking players that aren't going to be in the manager's plans for the Premier League?
Definitely, I think, and with the type of rebuild we need to put together this season in order to put up a title challenge, then if you can get players that are going to give you added quality from anywhere, but potentially if it is as part of the 49ers group, you're maybe getting players that you maybe wouldn't get otherwise, or at a mates rates, if you like, to bring these kind of players in without loan fees that they would maybe command from another team, then I don't see any wrong in that. It benefits us, benefits Leeds, and you would like to think as well that the likes of with the Cherny case this season, that if they come up here, they do well and they're not deemed good enough for Leeds, that there could then be value for both teams in putting together a deal that works. You look at the Leeds team and they've got some exciting players that don't even get in their squad. I think we've been linked with a few already as soon as the takeover was announced.
Yeah.
But I would be open to taking in players for anywhere as long as they improve the squad. But then you don't want to, as part of your rebuild, have to then have another rebuild next year because you've oversaturated the squad depth with players that you then can't afford to keep or aren't allowed to keep because you've not got those kind of clauses in deals.
Yeah, that's it. And we all know about clauses and deals with loan players because we've been bit before, haven't we?
I was having a nice time, Jock, until you said that. Thanks, mate.
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead, Tam. Yeah, sure.
Russell Martin likes to raid former clubs, as I've been told. So there could be a chance of getting some Southampton players up as well. Especially there's a couple of people that are out of contract soon. So I think we could get that sort of calibre player up here. So it's just a thought to keep in our minds because he has done it with clubs before.
Okay. Mitch, Paul asks, Connor Cody, what would you think?
Wouldn't say no, but I think, as always, the wages and everything else have got to be right.
Yeah.
I think Gordon in the comments has actually touched on a player that I really like, and I'd actually floated the idea last year, but I don't think we could afford them, was Kyle Walker-Peters. I quite like the look of him, but again, there's so many rumours about what his wage is. There's rumours between 20 grand to 45 grand a week.
Yeah.
And if it's at that top tier, even if you met in the middle and said even 35 grand a week, that's just under the new model. That's not going to work for anybody. I'd love to have Walker-Peters, but I just don't see it. Because I think he'll also have options from the bottom half of the Prem for me. I think you'll have a couple of those, especially with them having about 1,900 teams in Europe next year.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to take a look at that and go, 10 million quid, he can be a solid squad player, he can play game 3 of 3 in the week, and he can do a job in the Premier League. He's quite a good fit for a lot of players. Again, I would love to have him, but I think up here, and I get where Tam's going with the Russell Martin raiding former clubs and stuff like that as well. I think he's going to have much less control over that here than what he's had previously. It's going to very much be Purdy and Thelwell telling him these are the players that you have. By all means, I'm pretty sure if they walked into his office and said, right, we've got 6 players here, right, Russell, you tell me, is there any one of these 6 that you do not want in your team? And can you justifiably tell me why? I think you'll get obviously a level of input.
Yeah.
But I think, and you look at how Leeds work, for example, and it's a great example to look in, even if you look at that wider Red Bull network, the coaches are very much, they are head coaches for a reason. They are not managers for a reason. It's because the layers above them make the decisions and their bosses make the decisions of, these are players that are assets to the club, not assets to the manager. And I think that's something that's going to be a very clear differential for him. But going back to Connor Cody, plenty of experience. I think, is he out of contract?
I think he is, yeah.
I mean, I think if you gave me a shootout between him and Cam Burgess, for example, I'd take Cody probably first over Sam Burgess.
Right.
Cam Burgess, sorry, not Sam Burgess. And again, that takes quite a lot for me to say that because I like a big 6'4" giant at the back and all. They have the height that I can only aspire to.
Billy, Curry's asking about Martin's use of goalies, none of which fit the mould. Do you think a new goalie would be a priority?
I've got to be honest and say, yeah, regardless who was coming in, I kind of think so. Jack Butland came in for a couple of games at the end of the season and he looked fine. He looked back to the Jack Butland who wasn't throwing in goals and who was making some pretty decent saves. I don't think I would feel confident going into next season with a Jack Butland for 2 seasons, and it's almost like the start of his career where he was the next big thing, and he had like maybe a season or so where he looked quite good, and then inexplicably just his form seemed to go off a cliff, and then he became this sort of like the famous third choice English keeper on decent money, and he came up and when we had him in that first season, it was like we'd won the raffles, like where's this guy been, and how lucky are we? And eventually, when we sell him in a couple of seasons, we'll get 20 million, no problem. And then this season, I'm struggling to think. I've seen bad keepers and I've seen good keepers, but I'm struggling to think of a Rangers keeper who has been so good for a season and then so catastrophic for a season. And but I don't know what's going on in the background. His dip in form seemed to coincide with him having a baby arriving, because I think it was round about then that he made that like inexplicable rush out in the box and cemented. I think it was a St Mirren player to give a penalty away.
Yeah.
And that was like the first howler. And then it's like, okay, well, everybody has one of them, and it just seemed to sort of like snowball from there. So yeah, like Liam Kelly is solid and he's fine, but he's not top class. Jack Butland is top class when he's top class, but after seeing almost an entire season of like throwing a goal in every second game and then every game to the point where we had to bring in Liam Kelly, partly because he was obviously a better keeper, but also we were protecting Jack Butland at that point. And I actually think they did a decent job. I think taking him out, letting him settle down and then bringing him in for a couple of games where he did fine maybe makes him a wee bit more saleable and definitely settles his nerves for next season. But I've never been a big fan of his distribution. I don't think he's great with the ball at his feet. I don't think you can watch him and not have your heart in your mouth sometimes. And when you ally some of if you put a blooper reel of the stuff that he threw in last season, I personally would be looking, if we could get even 5 million for Jack Butland, as a third choice keeper somewhere, and bring in someone as a replacement, I would be up for that. If we have to go in with Jack Butland as the number one next season, well, maybe he'll have a good season, maybe he's doing it turning about and it's good season, bad season, but I think back to we've had some great keepers down the years. You think back to their howlers. And like Alan McGregor, it's the old firm game where the ball bobbles and we come back and win, I think, like 4-2. You can actually remember individual howlers across a career, whereas Jack Butland's had about 8 of them last season. So yeah, if we could get, I would be very keen, because I think this is like fairly standard football sort of like cliche, but I think if you've got a solid keeper, the defence aren't worrying about what's behind them and they can then concentrate on doing their job and the whole team is more settled. And I just think Jack Butland, next season, it's kind of like it's Schrodinger's goalkeeper. Are we going to have Jack Butland of the first season or Jack Butland of the second season? For me, that's a big risk. I'd rather see someone else brought in. So, for me.
Yeah, I think somebody that would push him and try and push him to get back to form, because I don't think Kelly's the guy to push him, and he was given it obviously on the current form of Butland, and he did okay, but he's not a goalkeeper that's going to push for the Rangers number 1 jersey. Doug kindly provided some slides for us for potential transfer targets. So, Ross, I'll come to you. The first one is Harry Darling, and he's out of contract and he's worked under Martin twice. If you want to take a look at that, have you heard of him at all, or do you know anything about him?
No, I need to be honest with you. I thought it said Harry Darling, and I thought I've been a few of them in my life, but Harry Darling, no.
That show's
No.
over, boys.
No.
Like, compose
No,
yourself.
no, I must admit, I have not. English lower league. I see having two Waynes and working all the time. I've no got time. I don't watch. I used to watch every week, and I'm useless to you here, Jock. To be honest, I'm really never heard of the guy. Having a wee look, looks as if
That's fine.
he's
I do
can
know he
play
had.
in.
He was highly rated when he was younger there, and if you're looking at his stats, he's a goal scoring centre back there, and his pass accuracy is great for a centre back. And if this is what Russell Martin's style of play is going to be, this is the sort of centre back. Is going to be comfortable with the ball at his feet. As Doug's highlighted there, the cons is he's no European experience, but an out of contract centre defender, I think that's somebody that if he's worked under Martin twice, I'd imagine it's somebody that he trusts. So it might be somebody that he might bring in, and maybe even potentially look to give the captaincy to.
Right.
Mitch?
I think Harry Darling is a very, very good player, and I'll just put my teeth in to say that, unlike Ross. Harry Darling's a great player. Genuinely, he's a very athletic, big. He's a huge centre back. He's about 6'3", massive, and he's a very commanding presence for a young player at the back. Considering the fact that he's not in his prime as of yet, he's a player that I actually think fits the outskirts of the transfer model, where you go, if we can get him this summer for free, and he stays here for say 18 months, he's a player that, again, let's fast forward 18 months from now, somebody puts an offer in for £3 to £4 million for him. I don't think that's outside the realms of possibility, in terms of his ceiling. Do I see him becoming a £10 million centre back? Probably not. Would he be a £10 million centre back if he was a squad player for a Premier League team right now? Absolutely.
Probably.
When you take that English tax out of the situation, but I think he's a very good. I actually think he'd complement Suter quite well. In terms of he can leave Suter to go and be the siege defender at the back. Let him go and do what Suter does, and then let Harry Darling focus on playing the ball out and be the ball-playing centre-back at the back that probably prior to the season before Connor Goldson left us, that Suter had with Connor Goldson, where Connor Goldson went, I'll go and take the ball up the field, you just go and focus on go and do your lunatic defending at the back, do the job of the centre-back, which is keep ball out net. That's all I need from my centre-backs. I need one of them that focuses on keep ball out net, one of them that focuses on get ball upfield. That's all I need. It's very simplistic. Might be Sam Allardyce for you in here, but I'm very much old school that way. Let one defend, let one launch, and that way I think Harry Darling would kind of slot in quite nicely when I'm in beside Nico Raskin if Nico's going up the pitch.
Yeah.
Almost in that way that not probably to a better quality extent, the same way that John Lundstrom used to, where if somebody else went spraying up from midfield, John Lundstrom would just slot into that number 6 spot for a couple of minutes. That's the same way that I think Harry Darling can fit into a system.
Tam, you wanted to say something there?
Aye. What is interesting to see is the recoveries as well.
Right.
Because that tells us he's got a bit of pace about him.
Okay.
So he's good. He's good at recovering the ball. As it said, tackling could be better, but 45% tackling is actually quite good. when you look at some of the best tacklers in the world. 45%, he's probably in the maybe top 200. 45% is really good. Passing accuracy, 88%. Again, that's unreal for a centre back. Last season, our best passing accuracy was around 78%. Don't quote me on that. That was the last stat I saw. So I think he will be good. He obviously looks big, strong. Mitch has just said that. I'm hoping that he's got something in him that's a bit aggressive, because we need that at the back. We've not really got somebody just now that's like that. The players we've got just now are just pacifists. I think that's the right word. They're not really looking to maybe leave something on somebody, which I'm hoping he does have.
Billy, we obviously need a right back to replace Tavernier if this season, if not next season. So Doug's provided 2 right backs here, so I'll go with the cheaper one first, which is Callum Britton, contracted to next year. Against another right back, there's a very, very good passing accuracy. Seems to contribute with a couple of goals and more assists than anything else. Seems to be very, very involved in chances created as well. The other option he has provided is Callum Walker-Peters. Now, he's out of contract. Now, Callum Walker-Peters is one I'm more familiar with, because he's probably been at Southampton a lot longer. Would you take somebody that's probably going to demand a higher wage than Kyle Walker-Peters because he's a Premier League player and he's out of contract, or would you go down the division and take the Championship player at the lower wages that's slightly younger and probably has more resale value?
Well, I've got to be honest, a bit like Ross, my knowledge of English Championship and lower league football is not deep. But having a quick scan at both of the options there, the thing that I would find interesting is I know we can't just load the team with youngsters, but both of them are of an age where doesn't look like there'd be much resale value. I mean, if Kyle Walker-Peters is 28 now, is he just 28 or is he just about to turn 29? I don't know. That would be a question. But you're talking about someone that even if we use him for a couple of years, are you really going to make any money on him by the time he's turning 30? And if that figure is that figure accurate? Am I misreading that he's played 35 games? Is that this season or is that his?
This season, mate.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So at least he's playing, but I don't know. Like, that's what it'll be interesting to see what the 49ers have lined up, because I think there'll be a real issue if we don't have a replacement for Tav. I'll be happy to say that I don't think Tav has ever been the issue in the Rangers teams where he's been castigated. I don't think Tav's been the issue when you look at his number down the years. I think Tav has been surrounded by players that weren't as good as Tav, and if there had been more players of his quality, I think there's a chance we'd have won more. But he's been in decline for 2 years now, and it took him half a season to get up and running, and I can't imagine it's going to be any better next season. So I think we need a replacement. And I can see the value in having like a ready-made experience replacement, like Callum Britton or Kyle Walker-Peters. But I wonder how that's going to fit with the 49ers model, because Callum Britton, maybe you could have for a couple of years and get your money back on. Kyle Walker-Peters, not so much. Between the two, Callum Britton and the first scan looked like a slightly better option, just age-wise and in terms of what he would cost and what we'd get out of him. But to be honest, I'd have been hoping we might have been looking at someone, maybe around about the sort of 23, 24 age mark, someone who's got good experience but development. I'm not sure how much development you're really going to get. Someone 28, is he really going to kick on? Is he going to make us any money? I'm not so sure. So between those two, probably Callum Britton. But to be honest, I hope we're casting our net a wee bit wider and maybe even looking at some European options, because I would be hoping bring in someone who's got enough experience that they're not a risk. There's someone that's played in the team, like I say, maybe 23, 24, 2-3 years out of them and still make money back on them. These guys look a wee bit old to me for that.
Okay. Ross.
I hope we're casting our net a lot closer to home and no overlooking the nose at the end of our face again with the boy Mulligan at Dundee. I know we've been linked to him, but for me, if you're looking at a right back who can come in, knows the league, out of contract, has performed well, decent numbers, and who you could bring in, yes. I think we should be looking closer to home for. I think as Rangers fans over the last X amount of years, we've always looked to the foreign fancy name, and I think that quite a lot of players, Lewis Ferguson, Josh Doidge, players like that, we have overlooked just because they're Scottish and they've not got the wee bit of zest that you're looking for, with a wee Enio at the end of their name or whatever else. I'd like to think that Josh Mulligan looks every bit as good a player as the two examples that Doug's pulled together for us. Sorry, Jock, for cutting across you there.
I was going to say, Scotty was asking there if you would take Patterson back. If that was an option, would you consider that?
He's another one of the ones who spends a lot of time on the treatment table for me. And injury record for a young guy is no great. When he's fit, he's obviously a very good player, and that's why we got the guts of 20 million quid, 16 million or whatever we got for him at the time. But again, it's that looking back the way. I think I would rather go and get somebody that we can make our own right back and not have to go and invest in that area of the park, especially for somebody who has got quite a horrific injury record, because we bring in folk that have got a perfect injury record and they get injured on the flight and the way over, don't they? So it just seems to be the way of things with us at times.
Injured making eggs. Tamson, are you playing the PlayStation again?
I'm not.
What is that?
I hope it's the PlayStation he's playing.
He's watching us live, he's keeping up to date with the comments.
I was watching your hand floating about there and I was like...
I've got ADHD, so I need to fidget with something.
It's alright, son, I know the feeling.
I was going to say, would you guys...
Go ahead, Tam.
Would you guys look close to home, as Ross said, for a left back and go towards Penrice?
Yep. For me, Penrice again ticks all the boxes. For what we're wanting, homegrown player, plenty of potential, and if it goes well, plenty of resale value. But when it comes to Scottish teams and Rangers, they don't want to deal with us, and traditionally, there's a tax go on, a bit like the Man United tax that happens down south. So. Yeah, I mean, if we could get the deal done, I would 100% take him, because I think he's a player that would probably thrive with the type of football your boy Martin wants to play. But it's getting even to get the negotiating table with the player, because Scottish clubs notoriously just bump up the price to the point where the club won't pay the money, and I think that's one of the reasons why we probably have not looked at that market for such a long time and dealing with clubs. We've always just tried to pick them up on a free because it's cheaper in the long run. But yeah, definitely for me, he's definitely somebody I would like to see and see how we get on wearing the Rangers shirt. Tam, I'll come back to you then. Say that we have to, either Diamandi or Raskin goes. I know there's interest in both. Doug's provided us with a replacement here, or potential replacement, and Matt Grimes. Now, looking at the stats here again, fantastic passing accuracy, tackles ones for midfield's quite high, which is great. Duels ones 54%, and nearly double the recoveries of your man Darling. Somebody you'd be interested in? Do the stats look good to you?
The stats look amazing. There's one little thing that's picking at me there.
Okay.
And it's they may struggle physically. That could be an issue. This, don't get me wrong, stats look absolutely amazing, but they may struggle physically. Could be a massive issue with the way Martin wants to play. He does like a physical team. He likes players that can run for days
Like
and
big
days
meaty
and
men.
days. But I've took.
Sorry, Tamsin, I've put you right off it.
Aye, big meaty man, and he doesn't look like one of them. I'm hoping that if we do look for him, that he's just as a backup, because 29 coming in with may struggle physically. There's no sell-on value, no way we can develop him, so it would probably be a no for me.
No problem. Go ahead, Mitch.
Matt Grimes isn't happening anyways. The 19 games, the 18 games that's here are actually from January when he moved to Coventry from Swansea.
Right, okay.
Frank Lampard bought him like over to Coventry with him, and I will say he was quite instrumental in them getting into the playoff run that they got to. But 29-year-old just moved club already to Coventry. He's not going anywhere. So for me, it's a bit of a non-starter anyway. I don't see it. I don't see him being a player that, he's going to bring anything to the table. And certainly, I think he signed something like a 3-year deal when he went to Coventry as well. Great player, tidy, but just no great.
Billy, this name here has been linked with the club a few times now. Samuel Edozie. Again, this is more the sort of the age group you were talking about. 22, granted he's contracted until 2027, but he's playing in the Belgian Pro League. 4 goals, 4 assists, good passing accuracy, tackles 1, chances created 18. High ceiling, high sell-on. He's talking about exceptional dribbling skill, pace and work rate. Left wing, up until obviously Czerny's good season we had, and then the season before we had Seaman before the injuries. The wingers' positions really we've sort of struggled with over the season. Do you think this is something that Martin will obviously try to bring in, or Thelwell will target those areas this season?
I mean, they'll have to. The question would have, looking at the numbers there, if they're accurate, is I think if that's his market value, we're not going for him, because it would be, if current conversion rate would be kind of like paying just a wee bit more than we paid for Ryan Kent, which is that the second highest transfer fee we've paid. So
yeah,
if it's 8.2 million, yeah, I mean, like the age looks good. He's got a lot of quite impressive looking numbers, but also numbers you could see being improved in a better side, with better players and cross accuracy 27%. Well, if you've got better players in the end of it, maybe, dribble success might be better.
Put in there.
Yep.
Cross accuracy 27% is actually up there with elite players around the globe.
I can well believe it. And looking at Rangers the last few years, we've had games where our accuracy must be maybe less than 5%. So 27%, but again, you don't know what style he's playing in, or who's in the end of it, or what the defences are like he's playing against. So I wouldn't pretend to know Belgian football to that level, but I just don't think he just doesn't look like someone we're going to spend £7.5 million on. I might be wrong about that, but the 20 million that we're supposedly working off of, I think, is a bit of smoke and mirrors, because you're never going to come out and say what your war chest is, because it just primes anyone you're buying players from to kind of bump the price up. So, it could be 20 million, plus it could be money we had left over from last year, apparently, plus we might get 20 million for Nico Raskin, and who knows what else might be knocking about in the kitty. But if you're talking about £7.5 million, if that market value is correct, and then you're talking about, let's say 20, 30 grand a year, that's like a £10.5 million, £11 million commitment. Maybe I'd be surprised, but I think he looks like someone who's jumped up a level. For me, we're more looking at maybe a player like this a year or two ago, when you can get him for 3 or 4 million, and then double the value or more. I like the stats. I haven't seen much of him. I'd like the stats, but if that value is correct, I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I don't see us forking out £7.5 million on a winger, to be honest.
You could be right. We just need to, at this point now, we're sort of, I think we're going to have to wait and see what the next couple of weeks brings in terms of the sort of free transfers we're going to be bringing in. Because I say we need to bring in bodies across the whole squad. Ross, I'll come back to you. Your priority position for this summer?
Goalkeeper.
Goalkeeper.
I think under Russell Martin's style of play, the goalkeeper is going to be the most important, one of the most important players in the team, because they need to be able to take the ball and invite the press onto them and pick passes for the back. And I also think, and me and Davey in the comments have spoke about this numerous times on podcasts in the past, Jack Butland is a goalkeeper who last season and possibly for the tail end of the season before is costing us double figures points in goals, when a Rangers goalkeeper throughout history is somebody who saved you 12, 15 points. So if you've got a goalie that's costing you a 30-point swing on the standards and expectations that the club's upheld forever, then I think a goalkeeper is the number one priority, and getting one that can fit into the system that Russell Martin wants to play, whereby they're comfortable leaving their 18-yard box and playing almost like a sweeper behind the two centre-halves.
Mitch, your priority position, quickly?
Winger.
Winger.
And it's got to be a right winger in particular. Because right now, we've lost Tierney. Yeah. McCausland is, at this stage, I would say a backup at best, but I would ideally like to see him take a loan somewhere next year if he's not going to force his way into the plans. So I think we probably need one, if not two, right wingers. Only thing I would touch on as well is, I think with the Thelwell's record of making free transfer signings is really, really, really solid. He done it really well at Everton, especially during the financial meltdown years. And when Wolves first came up as well, he built a Wolves team that was a functional team. It wasn't, made of sexy Portuguese names like it is now. It was made up of guys who've Premier League experience, knew what it meant. They were in sensible wages, between 30 to 40 grand a week. And I think we will see not 30, 40 grand a week players, but the Scottish level equivalent to it here. Yeah. I think right winger, we probably need two. And I don't really need to see my keeper coming out like he's juggernaut either. So,
Tam, just quickly, your priority position this season?
I want a centre back, big hard man of a centre back, and probably a DM as well.
And Billy, yourself, priority position?
I'd like a midfield generalissimo. I think we might be punting Raskin, and we haven't had a midfielder who can really dictate play, control the tempo of a game, and actually, you feel like it's their space in the middle of the pitch. Celtic have had that for a number of years with a player who I think is, to be honest, overrated. So I'd like to see, as if we were going to spend £7.5 million, it would be on a player like that.
I think you're right. I think we're sort of looking at either side of the pitch really. We're looking at the spine and we're looking in the forward areas. And I think wingers, for me, is key. And another stalwart centre back, and the midfield as well. Like you say, that somebody to dictate the play, somebody who can take the game to the scruff of the neck. So I need a Stephen Davis. That's what we need. Well, where are we going to find a Stephen Davis in this day and age for anything less than 40, 50, 60 million pound at that level of quality? Thanks, guys, for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll wrap it up here because we're just about hit the hour. Just remember, every night's a Rangers Journal night.